Here at the Independence Reformed Bible Church, we do allow for questions. We'll have communion here in a moment. But prior to that, as part of our worship service, we'd like to find out who has questions, comments about the sermon here this morning. Yes, John.
Two comments, actually, rather than questions. That the lack of blessing idea. You'll be blessed or you'll be not blessed.
By the way, excuse me a second to come back. How many of you have ever heard that, by the way? Am I the only one that's heard that? Yeah. Disobedience brings lack of blessing.
Yeah. It reminds me of this idea of annihilationism. That there's actually not an ongoing punishment in hell. You're just not going to heaven. And
I never thought of it.
They seem to be kind of parallel thoughts.
Okay.
And so I just made that connection.
Did you all hear that, by the way? Yeah, okay, good. I'd never really thought of it, but I think that's a fair, yeah.
The other thing, the idea about punishment of nations as opposed to punishment of individuals. It's recently pointed out in a sermon that I listened to from Pastor Raymond. Achan's sin caused punishment for Israel. We tend to think that they're not related, but the sins of the individual affect the nations, and so they go hand in hand. There's no separating the two.
Yeah, Achan wasn't the only one punished, was he?
No.
There were 32 other people, and that is throughout the scriptures. And it appears as if the higher you go in terms of responsibility, the greater the punishment. David, for example, numbers the people. God sends a plague. They didn't number the people themselves. They didn't number themselves. David did it, and yet they were punished for it. I think that one of the reasons why we don't talk about this like we should is because that's not the God that we want to. That's not the God we like. We like a God that just kind of his activity is kind of limited to me only, and that presents a God who punishes nations. And as long as we don't believe in the God who punishes nations, then I argue this morning that we will never promote the God who punishes nations, and we will never encourage the nations to worship Christ as King, because we don't really believe that. It's not good what we're doing. Yes?
Well, and also just to attach to that John's saying here, this idea of, nations and peoples being judged, I think also goes back to, it's not the God we want to serve, because quite frankly, a lot of times you find out that most professing evangelicals have a problem with the idea of federal headship. They have a problem with the idea that, that head which represents a greater body, the whole body is going to be held accountable for it. And I think that you see the breakdown of that in America, in that not only do we have it politically, that's an easy one to point to. We have it within the church, and worse than that, we have it within the family. Because we no longer believe that, a family shouldn't be held accountable for it. Yes, they should, because what their federal head does very much affects and impacts who they are and what they're doing, I think, for the kingdom. So I think that it also entails that rejection of the idea of federal headship, too.
It does. Last week, of course I was not here last week, I was on vacation. Thank you, by the way, for all of you who remembered us. But I have to tell the story to tell you that I was in church last week, even while I was on vacation. I wasn't cutting church like some of you do. I don't know who. So I was in church. I attended a meeting up in Pastor Steve Schlissel's church up in New York City, up in Brooklyn, actually. And he made a point. He made that very point. And he talked about the fact that the only thing really standing in the way of total humanistic takeover of everything, he said, is the Christian father, is what he said. He said, it is the Christian father standing in the way of that, because the Christian father represents the Christian family, And the Christian family says, we don't need the state to take care of us. We can raise a family, we can have civilized people, we can work, we can make money, we can live without you. And he went on with that. It's a huge statement. The Christian family states, we don't need the secular state. We're fine without you, thank you very much. And he said, and he made that point, for that reason, they have to destroy the Christian father. And everything's aimed at that, and they have to destroy it. And yes, so we get it that way, but not like we should. Not like we should, because we individualize God's working, if you will. But a Christian father blesses his whole family. And quite frankly, an unbelieving father curses his whole family. Thank you. We could talk about that for a while. Who else? Yeah.
This is a statement of relevance to this topic. I got to share this. 2 weeks ago, some of you know I was in Ohio for work, and working a trade show there. And a guy comes in our booth, is talking about this, that, and the other, and then says, "Well, hey, I just want to let you guys know the rapture is going to happen on September 26th of 2017." So I was, really? Well, I'd like to talk to you about this. And, of course, one of the questions we pose is, so then what are you doing here? If you believe that, what are you doing here? You got like a month. You're at a trade show. Well, doesn't the Bible say that God wants us to work, until He comes back? And it was just interesting because as soon as we began to engage him on the issue of, Christ and revelation and understanding, Christ as King, he had no answer. Well, I don't know. He didn't know anything. Literally, I don't know anything except I know God's coming back then. It was interesting. I mean, it didn't even make sense. He's telling other people, be ready for the end. It's all over. And then can't even give you what he's supposed to do.
As a result of that.
As a result of that. He just doesn't even know. Just work away and wait. No love for his neighbor. We began to talk about evangelistic things. Shouldn't you be out, calling on people to repent? Wow. The end's just about here. That's Jesus' job.
Yeah. So the way he understood prophecy there, sadly, is not engaging at all. It's speculative and maybe somewhat entertaining. Let's go have a talk about, the rapture again. Yeah. But that September time keeps coming up. That was Harold Camping's time also, was September, when he wrote his book 1994. Yes, Paul.
We hear a lot of that in our area. We're in a Baptist dispensational mecca. And when I call into our local radio station, there are a lot of people who are either perplexed about events that are happening around them, or they're anxious and awaiting the rapture that they believe is upon them. And sadly, what has happened is that the church has put itself in a position where it is reaping what it has sown. The church itself is cursed of God because it abandoned its rightful role in the culture. In the process, the culture has disintegrated, which they see as a sign that their end and their rapture is coming. So because they've made this self-fulfilling prophecy, they remain idle, waiting to be blanked out of here, when in fact they're cursed of God. And what has happened in the vacuum is that the ungodly have stepped in and overrun our nation and our institutions. And they have taken Christ away from our country and our culture as the hub from which everything revolves, and they've planted themselves there. And in our area, I call into this radio station because I hear it all the time, and it doesn't matter what the topic is. I don't understand what's happening. And it's God, it's judgment. You have to look past the Old Testament as an antiquated book for the by and by, and recognize it as a law book, the case studies of which apply today. What did Samuel tell the people of Israel? You abandon me and you seek to be like the nations around you, the appointed king who will assert dominion over you. This is what you're going to get. And that's where it is. And unfortunately, a lot of the church has done this. That's why, at least for us in Appomattox, it is an incredible thing to see churches popping up in different places. Now a church being planted in the D.C. area, because we see a faithful generation rising out of the ashes of a corrupted, degenerate, and dead church under the curse of God.
That's That's hard to take.
Well, you know, this is the other thing. Apparently, I'm blunt. But you know, we have a short period of time here. We are given a charge. What did Christ tell the disciples? Go into all the world and teach all nations, baptizing them, commanding them to be under covenant obedience to the one King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We don't have time to parse words. We cannot stand in front of people and talk nuance and argument. The truth is the truth. It's presented one way. What did the Apostle Paul do to Peter? Right? When he came to Antioch, he said, I withstood him to the face. I upbraided him. I rebuked him. The man was out of order. That's what we're called to do. It's not a game.
You know,
Anyway, I'm sorry.
we're good. Some of the effective missionaries were like that. Livingston and Carey. I mean, what was William Carey going to do when he saw, people throwing themselves in front of the juggernaut, offering themselves a live sacrifice to their gods? Or what was he going to do when he saw things like widow burning, for example? Was he going to get I'm okay, you're okay, and let's sit down and see what we have common ground? One of the most encouraging things I've ever read was William Carey when he first encountered widow burning. Now, my friends, I hope you all, this is a little bit off topic, but only a little bit. I hope you all get a hold of the widow burning thing that the Hindus did, and in some cases still do, in India. Get a hold of that the next time someone wants to tell you that all religions are the same. Get a hold of widow burning, please. And the first time William Carey ran up against it, he rebuked them publicly. And you know what they told him? They told him the same thing they tell you about abortion. Same thing. Say, well, William, if you don't like it, you don't have to participate. You don't have to burn your wife if you don't like it. That's what they say about abortion, right? Well, you don't have to get an abortion. And William Carey, as a foreign missionary, rebuked those folks who were burning this widow alive. That time was only one. Of course, they have multiple wives in India at times, and there were times, and William Carey attests to it, a man might have there was one case where a man had 33 wives. Most of them preteens. And they burn them all. What's William Carey supposed to do? He said what he had to be said. And that's true. We are living in those times. Oh, my word. We've been in those times. These are Jonah times.
We see that, again, in our area, because of homosexuality and abortion and the degradation of the culture, they think we have reached some unparalleled time of evil. And I say, look at biblical antiquity. Look at history. What are you doing? This has all been seen and done before. There's nothing new under the sun. Now get out and do something.
Yeah.
Stop collecting cars, vacations, and TVs and go to work.
Yeah. The first time I ever realized what was going on in Canaan was a shock to me. It was beyond horrible. And our friends from South Africa come up and say, we complain, I do, about the wickedness, and they're all like, you have an awful lot left here. It's not like it is in some countries. You really got to get to work here and stop whining. Who else? Yes, Alan.
This week I read an article about this new Christian down in North Carolina who was going to this church, and the church actually put Starbucks in their church. And he did what Jesus did. He made a whip, he went in there and drove them out, and they called the police on him saying he needed to repent of driving them out.
Oh, man. Well, you know what? Who here can say the man was wrong to do that? Wow. Man. Who says there's not drama in the modern institutional church from time to time? That would have been a moment. I sure can't say he was wrong at all. Starbucks is a symbol of wickedness. It is. It's good coffee. Right. It tastes good, right? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you like Starbucks coffee, but and I hate all coffee, so I hate them. I hate them all. But I mean, they don't get to be Starbucks charging what, $5 for a cup of coffee? Is that only $4? Whatever it is. Can you imagine if you spend $200 a month on coffee alone? Wow. But anyway, fact of the matter is, Starbucks has very publicly set themselves up against Christ. They've done it publicly. And that's a fact. Not, there won't. No. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, we would, but the crazy school won't let us put a Starbucks in there. You really grow the place. Yeah. Yeah, would have, yeah. Wow. How about that? Good for that guy. Wow. Wow. Well, on that note, we're going to go ahead and serve communion. All right, Seth and John, if you could step up.